Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. This is just a quick video regarding Epstein and his ties to consciousness and consciousness funding, research into solving the quote-unquote hard problem of consciousness. For those of you who are interested in philosophy, the problem of consciousness basically asks the question: if we live in physically determined universe, if we live in a universe that is best explained and described using the third person methods of science, then where does that leave consciousness, since a quality of consciousness, or the main quality of consciousness, seems to be its first personal aspect, the what it's likeness, or what philosophers refer to as the phenomenal aspect of consciousness. So if we have this fundamental understanding of consciousness where it is characterized by its qualitative first personal aspect, the what it is like of experience and reality, the what it is like to see red, in contrast to just the physical description of red, then how does consciousness relate to, for example, the brain? Is consciousness reducible to the brain, or is consciousness something else, something different, something irreducible? Okay, let's just hear a little bit from Epstein Talks, Quantum Physics and the Soul, and this is from the Bannon interview.
Currently unexplainable. I believe we need an entirely different system of analysis to try to figure out.
But
Sorry.
No, with Newton, with all his alchemical studies and things he worked on the spiritual side, Leibniz that just talked about the soul, Schroeder talked about what is life. If a modern scientist,
I guess he meant to say Leibniz there. These conversations are pretty stupid. These people don't know what they're talking about. But okay, let's continue.
or someone that you funded at MIT or Harvard or one of these things, talked in those types of terms, they would be considered to be a wingnut today, wouldn't they? They would not be. They would not be on the path for tenure, right?
Unless they were in the philosophy department.
This is exactly my point. We're talking about three of the greatest mathematicians in mankind's history that have really changed mankind. Talking like this, what happened? How do we get to a situation where they could not be in the high physics, they could not be in the mathematics department or working in high energy physics?
Good, it's an easy answer. Newton was a combination of mathematician, or geometer then, and philosopher.
This is a pause. It's so gross what he does with his hands. Why can't he just not talk like a normal person? And just as a little bit of background and context, they're talking about the soul and where does the soul fit within the quantum universe. And basically Bannon is complaining that why can't scientists not talk like this anymore? They would have to go to the philosophy department, says Epstein.
And as time went on, those disciplines seemed to move apart. We had philosophy. Some of the philosophers can't do math.
Stop
and some
doing
of the
that.
mathematicians. And again, mathematicians often break into two categories. People that solve problems. Those are more like geometers in the old days, just problem solvers. And then there's thinkers, theoreticians. They're more like the old movement towards philosophy.
Gross.
But
so
neither
gross.
one of those two groups have been able to figure out why something is alive as opposed to something that's not alive. No one's been able to describe what the soul is, but we all know it exists. And I think what we need is science is a bad word. I think science only describes the things we already know about the physical world. In fact, there's an argument that the physical world that we see has been created out of our systems of mathematics. Mathematics, everyone knows mathematics describes the physical world much greater than it should, unless my view, the physical world really comes out of conscious beings that have mathematics. So they create it. This table appears to you and I to be solid. To a bat, or if, because we have light that's bouncing off the table into our eyes, it appears solid. If instead of eyes that responded to wavelengths of visual light, our eyes responded to radio waves, the radio frequencies, it's not different, it's the same type of frequency as light, but different speeds, the table's invisible. We know that our phone works in this room. So the waves are coming through the windows, the waves are coming through the walls. So the walls are invisible to that type of radiation, that type of energy. The walls are, I can see them because my eyes, a physical system determines that the walls are there.
You, with Murray Geldman, you founded, or were the original donor, and had the idea of Santa Fe Institute. In 10 or 15 years later, that effort to study the complexity of systems mathematically,
yes,
was
it's a
essentially
total failure.
Yes. A total failure.
Total failure.
Why is that?
It's the failure of science because, in fact, if to some extent science doesn't describe romance, I don't know why I'm attracted to somebody. I don't know. People are attracted to each other, and everyone has the same feeling. They've seen someone walk in the room, and they say, "Oh, that person gives me a creepy feeling."
You're a gross pedophile. Okay, so it seems like they're just changing the topic now from consciousness and Epstein's theory of consciousness. And just to understand a little bit of the background here, let's remember that Epstein funded for many, many years, he funded the Edge Institute for his friend John Brockman. Edge Foundation, sorry. For many years, he helped his pal John Brockman founding with the Edge Foundation in 1988. What is the Edge Foundation? It is an organization dedicated to exploring complex and scientific and intellectual ideas. Through the Edge.com website, often associated with the third culture concept, he, namely Brockman, facilitates discussions among leading thinkers in science, technology, and philosophy. Okay, now among the key figures we have Richard Dawkins, Steven Pinker, and Jaron Lanier. But what is important for us now is specifically those thinkers at the Edge Foundation that have to do with consciousness. And so, for example, we have famously Daniel Dennett, who died just a couple of years ago, and Dennett is one of the founding, where do I have my Dennett? Dennett, is it here? Yes, so he's one of the founders of the philosophy of consciousness. He has this famous book called Consciousness Explained, and Dennett is kind of like a physicalist, but he also believes that there's a role for intentionality. And what is intentionality is like the sphere of meaning, like reasons instead of causes. So like why did the rock fall? Because of gravity, that is a cause. Why did I go to the store? Because I wanted to buy some milk, that is a reason. So Dennett met Epstein. He was at the Billionaires Dinner 2002, 2003, 2006, 2008, and 2009. Those were all years in which Epstein was funding the Edge Foundation. And let me just read a little bit from Dennett in the Edge Foundation website. Having turned my back on propositions, I thought, what am I going to do about this? The area where it really comes up is when you start looking at the contents of consciousness, which is my #1 topic. I like to quote Maynard Keynes on this. He once said, "Do you think in words or pictures?" To which he responded, "I think in thoughts." It was a wonderful answer, but also wonderfully uninformative. What the hell's a thought then? How does it carry information? Is it like a picture? Is it iconic in some way? Does it resemble what it is about, or is it like a word that refers to what it's about without resembling it? And their third, fourth, fifth alternatives, looking at information in the brain and then trying to trace it to information in the genes that must be responsible for providing the design of the brain that can then carry information in some other senses. You gradually begin to realize that this does tie in with Shannon's information theory. Shannon is one of the fathers of what's the name of that? Fuck. Cybernetics. Cybernetics. There are, along with Wheeler. There is a way of seeing information as a difference that makes a difference, to quote Donald McKay and Bateson. Ever since then, I've been trying to articulate, with the help of Harvard evolutionary biologist David Haig. And let's remember that, like, Epstein donated millions to Harvard, just what meaning is, what content is, and ultimately, in terms of biological information and physical information, the information presented in A Mathematical Theory of Communication by Shannon and Weaver. Sorry, not Wheeler. There's a chapter in my latest book called What is Information? I stand by it, but it's under revision. I'm already moving beyond it and realizing that there's a better way of tackling some of these issues. So basically, trying to understand how does information processing relates to consciousness as an epiphenomena of the brain. Here we have another little person backed by Edge, or supported by Edge, which is Philip Goff. And Philip Goff has a radically different theory of consciousness that is not physicalist, but rather he calls it, following a long tradition in philosophy, panpsychism. And here, just reading a little bit from the Edge website, and he might get a little pass in the sense that I think he wasn't featured in the Edge Foundation website until 2019. So, if the records show at least a connection with Epstein up until 2017, but of course, who the hell knows, We're now going through a phase of history where people are so blown away at the success of physical science and the wonderful technology it's produced that they've forgotten its philosophical underpinnings, they've forgotten its inherent limitations. If we want science of consciousness, we need to move beyond Galileo. We need to move to what I call Post-Galilean paradigm. We need to rethink what science is. That doesn't mean we stop doing physical science or we do physical science differently. I'm not here to tell the physical sciences how to do their jobs. It does, however, mean that it's not the full story. We need physical science to encompass a more expansive consumption of the scientific method. We need to adopt a worldview that can accommodate both the quantitative data of physical science and the qualitative reality of consciousness. That's essentially the problem. So again, it's kind of like reverberating the same ideas that we just saw explained in Epstein. And just to explain then, or to contextualize what Epstein is talking about in this interview with the quantum physics and the soul, when he says that consciousness is, what does he say? That it's basically a product of, that reality is basically a product of conscious beings that can do mathematics. He's thinking that the way in which our brain interacts, or mathematical brains interact with the physical system, produce the kind of outputs that allow us to think of reality as composed of, for example, chairs and tables and whatnot. It is not that the chairs and tables exist out there in a world independently of the way in which our conscious mind, which is, I think, something that he somehow relates to mathematics, or beings that can do mathematics. I don't know what the fuck he has in mind there, and I don't think that he's a very, I don't think it merits really thinking, as if Epstein was a serious thinker about these topics. He was not. He was just like a billionaire pedophile that like supported a bunch of people that kind of knew what they were talking about, so that they would say exactly what he wanted them to say or go into the directions that he wanted them to go. So it's not really worth engaging at an intellectual level as if he had something interesting to say. But it's important to engage with this because this is how reality is being shaped. Reality is being shaped by people who think like this. Anyway, it goes all the way back to just other forms of formal idealism like Kant and Descartes, but of course those were serious thinkers and serious philosophers. This is just like the technocratic version of that. And speaking of, we need to mention this guy as well. We need to mention this guy and we need to mention this guy. So, and we need to mention Closer to Truth because that guy, the guy from Closer to Truth, namely Robert Kuhn, is very much featured in the Epstein emails. He's disgusting. Like, that guy is fucking disgusting, honestly. Robert Lawrence Kuhn, what the documents actually show. So if you are familiar with like popular philosophy and like philosophy on the YouTube sphere, you undoubted that, I don't know how to pronounce that word. Without a doubt, you have stumbled across this channel, which is called Closer to Truth, where they do like interviews with like Terry Dennett again, and like other people who know about like evolutionary theory and physics, but not from the philosophical perspective. Like, what is truth? What does mathematics allow? Is mathematics some sort of like intrinsic truth of the universe, like Galileo thought, or are there some kind of like limits to mathematics and blah 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 and all these kinds of questions? So on these kinds of questions, Closer to Truth is it's the relevant channel, and the originator, the founder of that channel is that disgusting guy, Robert Lawrence Kuhn. So let's just hear a little bit about the consciousness problem with the Kuhn guy, and then I'll read more about his connections to Epstein. What the fuck? Give it. Come on. Fucking corny. It's disgusting. I hate it.
Pick one word to characterize human existence.
Shit.
I do not hesitate. Consciousness. The inner sense of awareness. Sights, sounds, thoughts, feelings. The intimate presence of self-awareness. Aware of yourself, being yourself.
You can just tell this guy loves
That's
to hear
the
himself
hard
speak.
problem of consciousness. Internal sentience, our inner movie, the ultimate frontier of human exploration.
You can just tell he
I
would
marvel at all the diverse ways in which consciousness can be
clone
examined.
himself and have sex with himself.
I know consciousness carries great import. Here's what I do not know. What is consciousness?
No shit.
I'm Robert Lawrence Kuhn, and Closer to Truth is my journey to find out.
Oh, Kuhn, not Kuhn. Sorry. Sorry, Bob.
How to explore consciousness. Usually, philosophers talk to philosophers, brain scientists to brain scientists. Lots of interesting ideas, but no breakthroughs. Can we enlarge the discourse? View consciousness, including the hard problem of inner experience, through different conceptual filters, break boundaries, emancipate our thinking. How to start clean with minimum intellectual bias or baggage. define consciousness, lay out the issues, go from there. I go to Cambridge, England, to meet a philosopher known for his tough-minded realism, former editor of the prestigious journal Mind, Simon Blackburn. Simon, I've been obsessed with consciousness my whole life. I did a doctorate in neurophysiology. How?
I don't care. So that's the guy. He's in his journey to figure out what consciousness is, and for that he gets funded by some billionaire pedophiles to go talk to the smartest minds in the world that are doing the research on consciousness. One of them is Mr. David Chalmers, the one that actually coined the term the hard problem of consciousness, and right now has like, this is a long time ago when he still looked like he was kind of a human being. Now, right now, I don't think he looks like a human being anymore, but he coined the term the hard problem of consciousness, and it's basically that thing I explained regarding, okay, how can we understand the relationship between the physical universe, which is described in third personal terms as like physical particles, and the causal realm of things bumping into each other or whatever. Of course, now with like quantum physics and whatever, it doesn't matter. How is that supposed to be related to phenomenal consciousness, how things appear to us, the qualitative aspect of experience, what it's like to see red, what it's like to fall in love, what it's like to discover that reality is a fucking joke?
The existence of anything in the world. I could doubt that you exist. Maybe this is just a dream. I could doubt that any of the tables and chairs around us exist. I could maybe even doubt the existence of my own body. But the one thing I can't doubt is that I'm conscious right now. I think, I am conscious, therefore I am. My consciousness is presented to me more directly than anything else in the world. If this is an illusion, then the illusion is consciousness.
Some say, okay.
And that's basically Epstein positions too. If you read some of the other emails, it's illusionism in the sense of phenomenal consciousness is an illusion that arises out of the brain or something. And how is that also related to his idea that reality is also an illusion created by consciousness? Well, I don't really know. I don't think he knows either, but like, I don't think this guy is like worth investigating again as a serious intellectual. Here we have an email, for example, with that weird guru guy, Deepak Chopra. They love just like sucking each other's intellectual dicks. It's actually kind of disgusting. So no shape can be divorced from the seeing of it. No seeing can be divorced from the witnessing. Awareness or seer and scenery are modifications of the same awareness. Awareness modifies its as all shapes and forms, and also the witnessing of them. There is nothing else. Awareness is timeless. Its modifications as seer and scenery are in time. Jeffrey writes on March 17, 2017 at 5:50 a.m. Go to sleep, Jeffrey. Of course, he doesn't sleep because he's not human. Names are not important. The question is, are some things more similar or more different? If I measure the height of 100 people, a graph of heights will form a shape, a bell-shaped curve. That shape is everywhere. The shape is not a conscious artifact. The shape is not aware. A human construct gives it a name, perceives it, etc., but it exists without either. It is an organizing principle. That is not a construct. We tell ourselves complex theories about self. It is a fiction that allows some regulation of the entity. Mediation hacks the feedback loop. And then Deepak Chopra, awareness equals consciousness. There is liver cell. Humans make up the world and gave a name to, oh sorry, I'm reading them in the wrong order. And gave a name to a mode of knowing, experience, and behavior. There is no Jeffrey or Deepak either. These are all symbols and human constructs for reality. Jesus, these people are so annoying. And other people they include in their emails is the Donna Hoffman, who is another person who doesn't believe that reality exists, and he just believes that reality is like an output of consciousness, very similar to, again, what Kant had already said, like a billion years ago, not a billion, but like a couple hundred years ago, but in the technocratic way of saying it, in the computer-like way of saying it, in the AI is going to create a singularity and rule over us kind of way of saying it. So just to close off this very chaotic video, let's finish with, so Epstein funded again the Edge Foundation that does work on the question of consciousness and the hard problem of consciousness, and also this Robert Kuhn, I want to suck my own dick guy, who is Robert Lawrence Kuhn, a public intellectual. Yeah, that's one way of putting it. A media figure who has worked as an investment banker and strategic advisor, written books on science and religion, and hosted the long-running television series Closer to Truth, which features interviews with science philosophers and theologians about cosmos, consciousness, and meaning. Charity fillings and email archives show that Epstein, through his foundations, donated to the Cohn Foundation and was approached about funding specific Closer to Truth programming. Those documents place Kuhn with Epstein's philanthropic and media network, not inside his trafficking operation. Yeah, okay, whatever. Like, what is ideas? But, oh no, what did I do? Oh, okay, just change it to sec. I want it back like it looked before. Oh, whatever. So in the filings show Gratitude America, which is Epstein private foundation, reports a grant of $150,000 to the Kuhn Foundation, described as a charitable contribution. 2018, the same Epstein Foundation reports a much larger grant of $500,000 to the Kuhn Foundation. So these are substantial grants, and if we read the emails, if you read the emails, which you should do, the emails show that he was actually like Epstein was actually telling Kuhn about like which people to fund, if they were charismatic or not charismatic enough. So yeah, that's all I have for today. I'm just gonna stop here because I have a headache from talking so fast. It is like not so much as an informative video. Of course, I'm informing a lot of things, and I can go deeper into the philosophy in some other video if it happens. I mean, it's not like anybody's watching this, but if it happens, it happens, and then you can take it more like as my own art project. Like, philosophy is corrupt, academia is corrupt, consciousness studies are corrupt. These are just quantitative ways of approaching a problem of the soul, and it's a soulless way of approaching the soul, and all of what you see in YouTube is fake. Goodbye.